the head of the world's biggest private media empire.
Murdoch likes to own newspapers.
Murdoch controls 175 newspapers, book and internet businesses, and some of the most popular and strident TV networks.
You know what I'm doing?
Shut up. You shut up about sex. Just shut up.
But how healthy is it to concentrate such global power in one man?
It is not defensible as a part of any liberal democracy.
20 years ago, Rupert Murdoch was at the forefront of an ideological battle to break the power of British trade unions. It led to blood on the streets. Back then, Murdoch had a reputation as a right-wing autocrat.
I mean, your fault, not my fault, if it doesn't work.
And his empire was piecemeal and close to bankrupt.
Oh, no.
Today, his news corporation is the biggest private media conglomerate the world has ever seen.
We operate in more than 75 countries, 30 languages, 3/4 of the world's population.
So how did he get from there to here?
Standard operating procedure is find a politician who needs help, offer the help, find out what that politician can do for you, and say the help continues if you do it for me.
Murdoch made a Faustian pact with conservative leaders Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. His media outlets backed them, and they smoothed his road to controlling a global media empire. But it was his relationship with British Labour leader Tony Blair that revealed Murdoch in his true politically promiscuous colours.
Very early on, after becoming leader of the Labour Party, Tony Blair flew literally halfway around the world to Australia to speak to Rupert Murdoch and his principal executives.
The British Labour Party regarded Murdoch as the devil incarnate.
In his party, who have told him that there is no spoon long enough to allow him to sup safely with the Murdoch devil.
Murdoch offered Blair a deal, support in making him Prime Minister in return for extraordinary power within the British government.
He was actually more influential in terms of policy with the Prime Minister than most of the members of the Cabinet, and in effect he was the 22nd member of the British Cabinet.
Across the world, Murdoch has proved keenly aware of the tension between journalism and his business interests.
He owned the South China Morning Post. They ran some articles that said the wrong thing about China, and he immediately sold the paper. And he said, why should I own a newspaper that makes people angry in Beijing, which is a place where I wish to do business?
But it was the Iraq War which revealed the extent to which Murdoch was prepared to use his extraordinary personal power to influence the course of world events.
Rupert, is there any agenda that you want to shape? For example, take the war. I mean, have you shaped that agenda at all in terms of how the war is viewed? I mean, we've tried.
He adopted it as a house policy. He got more or less the war that he was shouting for. That is, incompetent, underfunded, pointless, cruel and bizarre. But he got a war.
Today, the world's most pragmatic private media magnate increasingly dictates what we read, hear and see.
We report, you decide.
They're not favoring anyone.
It's potentially catastrophic. If the media is simply a servant of whatever bunch of burglars have seized power in the capital, then democracy is in very bad way.
Real journalism, fair and balanced.
Good morning, and thanks very much for coming.
Darkest recesses of your industry really laid bare this week. Well, I mean, something had to give, didn't it?
Indeed, but what a loss. I mean, it's going to be, the biggest loss, I think, is that we're going to lose, well, I've always said that I've just tried to write articles in a truthful way, and, what better source of getting the truth is to listen to someone's messages. Now, that might sound frivolous, but, several celebrities have called us evil and scum, whereas all we've ever tried to do...
But what right have you got to listen to their messages? What possible right?
I'll tell you what, let's bring in Steve Coogan, shall we?
I have to say, I think you're a walking PR disaster for the tabloids, because you don't come across in a sympathetic way. You come across as a sort of risible individual who is symptomatic of everything that's wrong with the tabloids. Well, because your attitude is, we're just selling newspapers, or we're investigative journalists, we're trying to tell the truth. You're not uncovering corruption. You're not uncovering, bringing down institutions that are inherently corrupt. You're finding out. You're just trying to find out who's sleeping with who.
Rumbles of discontent in Washington about whether news of the world-style phone hacking has been happening here are getting louder. A number of leading senators are calling for a probe into possible News Corporation misconduct, especially allegations in one British newspaper that Rupert Murdoch's journalists tried to bribe a policeman for the contact information of victims of the September the 11th attacks.
The concept that somebody would have been trying to violate their privacy after they were dead by trying to hack into their voicemails is going to be outrageous and grotesque to all Americans.
In the US, the main Murdoch properties include the venerable Wall Street Journal, the tabloid New York Post, and the right-wing Fox News channel.
News on News Corp today.
Covering this scandal has proved a challenge for Fox, especially on the day News Corp pulled out of plans to buy all of Britain's main satellite TV provider, B-Sky B.
This doesn't mean, Patty Ann, that News Corp won't revisit the plan sometime down the road, but for now it's been scrapped.
While Murdoch doesn't wield as much direct political influence in the US as in Britain, where politicians fear his media power and know that his support increases their chances of getting elected, US politicians of both parties seem hesitant to speak out, knowing that the Murdoch press has a long memory. On the left,
are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not familiar with that. But
on the right, where politicians regularly reference the September the 11th attacks when appearing on the Republican-supporting Fox News channel.
I'm just starting to watch that scandal on phone hacking evolve, and I don't know enough about it.
But campaign groups think if Murdoch's journalists are caught cheating, the price he will pay in America could be enormous.
The full weight of the American political establishment will come down on Mr. Murdoch if that turns out to be true.
The feeling is while politicians don't see eye to eye on much on Capitol Hill these days, they will agree any alleged efforts to hack the phones of the victims of the 9/11 attacks merits a thorough public hearing.